For the third year and counting, Richard Skipper has been celebrating the artists you love. Richard Skipper is all about celebrating life, art, and his guest body of work. Please join us while he showcases these diverse and talented individuals. Here's Richard Skipper.
Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. Who or what are you celebrating this afternoon? As I say on every show, there's always something to celebrate. And today we're celebrating a little earlier than usual because tonight I am going to see my dear friend Ann Tallman, who is doing her celebration of Elizabeth Taylor at 54 Below. And today is her birthday, so that's worth celebrating. I also celebrate Elizabeth Taylor. Those of you who know my show know about my encounter with Elizabeth Taylor. We'll save that for another show. Today is Positive Thinking Day. And those of you who know me know I'm all about positive thinking. It's also National Fortune Cookie Day. That's always celebrating. And it's also Resist Superstitions Day. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm very superstitious. And most people who are in the theater are very superstitious. And I am so excited about today's guest. First of all, Damon Evans. We have been corresponding with each other for so long.
I know.
Yes.
My appearance today is because of the great Albert Peaches Poland.
Albert Peaches Poland.
Yes. Nick and I went to visit Albert maybe a month ago. We'd been there the year before. The last thing he said to me was, do me a favor and do Richard's show. He said, my biggest regret is that I didn't do it sooner. He is a nice man. He will treat you well. So this, besides Elizabeth Taylor, this is in honor of Albert.
Well, I have a lot to live up to then. I absolutely, let's start by celebrating Albert Poland.
Yes.
I mean, this is a man, first of all, his book, Everybody's Stages, is a phenomenal book. Great memoir. And he just, and it's filled with love and respect for people in the business. I am not a gossipy type of a person. And as you know, you and I have had these discussions before. Yeah. His book is not gossipy.
No.
There are a lot of people out there who are, and I respect those. If they want to do that, that's fine. Right. That's for another show, and go watch those shows and celebrate those shows as well. But Damon, I want to ask you, I mean, because of the conversations and what pulled us together is your love of this business. Where did this love originate? I know that you grew up in Baltimore, but did you grow up in a household that was filled with theater or surrounded with theater?
Okay, let me tell you the first story. I just told this to the head of the Ava Gardner Museum. Okay, I was 4 years old. My mother took me to see The Barefoot Contessa. We got back into the house. I wrapped myself up in a sheet. I fly around the whole damn house. Now, this is 1711 North Payson Street. We had the marble steps in Baltimore. My grandfather said, Bert Teal, what the hell have you done with this boy? I sat down in the living room in front of one of those box black and white TVs and watched the TV. That was my first introduction to being a performer and to being different from my family. That I was 4 years old. I always had cast albums in the house. Oklahoma, South Pacific, Jamaica, House of Flowers. My crush was Pat Suzuki and Flower Drum Song. So, the business was not unusual. I remember in the 6th grade, Mrs. Taylor at PS 60 on Winsford Parkway, we had to write an autobiography. And ironically, I think I ended it with me being in Porgy and Bess, which Sport and Life is one of the roles I did. My mother also worked for the Black Press, the Baltimore Afro-American. That was one of her jobs. And I can remember the newspaper strike of the 1960s, early. Mrs. Oliver, Elizabeth Oliver, the Baltimore Afro, she said, "Here, Bertil, take Dickie," because they knew me as Dickie. "You take the press pass and you go to New York and see some shows." It was the middle of a newspaper strike. I don't know if anybody old enough to remember that. We saw No Strings, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. I played with Sam Levine and I think Stop the World. We interviewed Alvin Ailey in his dressing room. I was 13 years old.
Wow.
In that cast was Alvin, Claudia McNeil, Diana Sands, Cecily Tyson, Robert Hooks. This is a funny story. So we interviewed Diane. And just as the interview was over, I said, "Oh, Miss Carol, I envy you so much. I mean, all these gowns and wigs." And my mother got me and said, "Boy, did you have to embarrass me? I mean, the gowns and wigs." I said, "Well, Diane played my mother in Roots. And I played Alex Hailey. And I told her this story. And we had a huge laugh over it, you know. But I always knew. I think at 13, I made my professional debut at the Center Stage in Baltimore. I think the guy's name was Ed Golden. I think it was on Center Street. It was a children's musical. I studied with Debbie London. I worked with Steve Shockett. Howard and Ashman and Howard and I were in children's theater together at 11.
Wow.
And we did a production of the Fantastics together in high school. He played the boy. I was the narrator. It just was always there. And then I went to Interlochen.
Well, I want to talk about that in a moment, but you just described my childhood, except for, going to New York at 13 and having that incredible experience. But I would go to the movies and I would come home and I would imitate everything I saw on television. I mean, in my high school, and I have on my wall, I have a portrait of my high school. Yeah. I used to perform on the front steps of my high school, which is no longer there. And I would perform on the front steps and I would do these lunchtime concerts, acting out everything I had seen on television the night before. And when I went back to school for my 40th anniversary, the one thing that everyone wanted me to do was my interpretation of Steam Heat. It wasn't Steam Heat in the Pajama Game.
Yes.
The Pointer Sisters Steam Heat that I had seen on the Cal Burnett show.
Oh my God!
And I've had Anita Pointer on this show. And
yes.
I was able to share that story with her.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned high school because when I went to school, although Brown versus Board of Education and integration existed, I went to predominantly Black public schools. And we had incredible teachers. In my junior high school was a man named George Barrick, who headed the drama department. And I remember us doing an abridged version of Our Town in the 9th grade. And then I went to Douglas High School. We had the greatest teacher, Juilliard-trained Marion T. Smith. We had in the drama department, Mary West Miller Jones. I mean, oh God. I just marvel to think that we didn't want for anything. You understand?
I'm so glad that you are mentioning these teachers and you remember them by name.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
I do too. Because, I was very fortunate to have Carol Channing as a friend. And at a time when most people would have rested on their laurels, her and her husband were traipsing around the country with him driving, where they were fighting for the arts and education in schools. Until they were no longer able to do it, they were fighting to get arts in education. Most people may not even realize this. When funding is cut, the first thing that gets cut
arts
is the arts in education.
Yeah.
And one of the things that being in a school play, if you are lucky enough to be on any level, whether it's behind the scenes or on stage, you were taught community, you're taught teammanship, you're taught all of these things that help you later in life.
Oh, yes.
And it's a shame that a lot of kids do not have it. And one of the things that Harry, Carol's husband, used to say, unless a kid is exposed to a xylophone or a microphone, they won't know the difference between them.
No, they won't. Now, I've also got to tell you this. I can remember at the age, I think about 13, sitting next to Langston Hughes when he came to a production at the Arena Playhouse in Baltimore. To people who do not know, the Arena Playhouse is the second oldest African-American community theater in the United States. The first is the Caramoo in Cleveland. His play, Simply Heavenly, was being performed. There I am sitting next to Langston, the Arena players, Camilla Sherrod, Sam Wilson, June Thorne, Dolores Stokes. I can't remember his name now. Did all these plays after the fall, Glass Menagerie. I grew up with this. And in 1973, they gave me an award. They also have awarded to Andre DeShios, we're Baltimoreans, Tarzana Beverly, Howard Rawlins. We're all Baltimore people. So, I mean, but I think back, I don't remember when the arts weren't a part of it. I mean, really.
Growing up for me in South Carolina, my teachers, all my teachers, I worked very hard. I was a straight A student. I was in the Honor Society. And when these theater productions would come through my hometown, my teachers would let me out of class so that I could go and see them. And I would always make my way backstage. And I would always say, when I graduate from high school, I'm going to go to New York. Who should I study with? Where should I go? What should I know? Because it was always the dream. I knew that this was what I was going to do. You also had your eye on that prize. This is a question that I've been wanting to ask you. I know it's out there sometimes, and I've been burned by what I've read sometimes in a Wikipedia bio. But it said that you went to Interlochen on a Reader's Digest scholarship.
Yes.
That is true, isn't it?
Yes.
So
Yes.
Can you explain how that happened?
Okay. First of all, just before I go to that, I also want to give credit to another lady, Isabel Berger. She ran Children's Theater Association. This is where Howard and I met. Eddie Strauss, Broadway conductor, met at age 11. This was 1960, 61. I think there were only 2 or 3 Black kids there. The doors that have been opened. Isabel, we called her Dearie, was so far ahead of her time. I remember being cast in Tom Sawyer. Eddie was, I think, Tom. I went to Peabody Prep Department. I studied with Debbie London at the Children's Workshop with Shockett and all these other wonderful people. It was always there. So I had a strong background when I got to Interlochen. What happened? Okay. It was my 11th grade. I'm going to tell you the whole thing, okay?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I was living with my grandparents in Maryland. My grandmother was a phenomenal woman. She was also a very strong woman. She couldn't take the fact she couldn't deal with certain things. Like I was different. Okay. So I said, I don't think this is going to last. I got to get out of here. So it was the 1960s, and institutions were opening their doors to diversify student populations. And I said, I think I've got something going here. So I wrote to every boarding school, every arts institution that had a high school, and ended up with a scholarship, Reader's Digest, to the National Music Camp, which is Interlochen. When I got there that summer, halfway through the summer, they said, how would you like to go to school here? They called Mrs. Cedric Dowling, who ran the National Federation of Music Clubs, which administered the scholarship, and said, will you continue the financial aid? And Clinton DeWitt Wallace, I think, who ran Reader's Digest, said yes. And that's how I went to them.
Wow. What a great story.
I remember all these people. It was Mrs. Dowling, who was instrumental in reaching out to Reader's Digest, who had given the money to the National Federation of Music Clubs and said, would you fund him? And that's how I got there.
Now, we mentioned Albert Poland, Albert Peaches Poland. When are you going to write your memoirs?
I'm doing it now. I'm not sure if it's going to be in the form of a memoir. And by the way, people, I've got to tell you, and I know Richard has probably told you this, you've got to get Mary Rogers' book. You've got to get this memoir. This.
And Jesse Green, if you're out there, I want you to come on the show.
It's wonderful. Or I'm not sure if it's going to be a one-man show or what, but I'm in the process of doing it. And I owe that to my college professor at Brooklyn College, Dr. Dale Bynum, who taught African American drama and literature. I got my degree, my longtime dream, at the age of 69 with honors from Brooklyn College in Africana Studies and a minor in history. Wow. And she is the one who encouraged me to tell your story. And up until then, I didn't. I didn't think I had a story because, Richard, I was never taught to do it for myself.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it wasn't until I told it the first time I said, oh, wow, I really did do something. And I mean, that's just the truth.
There are so many parallels between your story and my story. As I'm talking about the childhood aspects of it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I spent many summers living with my grandparents. My grandmother was very, very strong and she encouraged me to follow my dreams. Mm-hmm. When everybody, including my parents, everybody laughed and said, you know, these are pipe dreams. You're never going to go anywhere with this. Just stop thinking about it. Mm-hmm. But I was so determined that I was going to make this happen. Were your parents still involved in terms, did they still believe and encourage you to follow your dreams? Or were you really pretty much on your own as far as pursuing your dreams?
My mother and father divorced when I was, I think, 2. Okay. So it was pretty much my mother and I, and pretty much her side of the family. All of them, my grandmother and my aunt, were teachers. So they kept saying, well, go to school, get your teaching degree. And
have something to fall back on.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. I think my mother was the one. That our relationship was almost one of emotional incest because I didn't know where I began and she ended. But once she saw the talent, she certainly was pushing me. Was she a stage mother? Yes and no. But and then once I started performing and achieving things, they were there. But it was definitely get something to fall back on. Definitely, that was the mentality of the era. That was the mentality of the household I grew up in, and that was it. But I always I never doubted it. I never doubted I would have a career. I just didn't. It was so. Stanley Bennett Clay, a young black actor. We were in Hollywood together, and we never met. We met after 45 years. We hooked up, and he said, "Did you ever think that we would be part of history?" I said, "No, I just did the job." And he said, "I didn't either. I mean, the things that we did on Broadway television, no, you just did the job. You weren't in the moment that aware. I wasn't. Although I knew I was working with great people. Always knew I was working with great people."
Well, I know there's the close proximity of Baltimore to New York, but there comes a point in every actor's life, young actor, who wants to pursue a career where you're thinking of the West Coast or staying on the East Coast in your case. So I'm assuming that New York was the logical choice for you.
Always.
So did an equity card bring you to New York, or did you get your equity card after you got to New York?
Okay, here's another good story. I was in my sophomore year at the Boston Conservatory of Music after I graduated from Interlochen. And I was an understudy in the Boston Company of Hair. That's how I got my equity card. Now, before that, I did a workshop production with the great Broadway director, choreographer, Billy Wilson, who taught me how to work. Billy was going to fire me. And I remember I came there and there was an actor there. I said, "Why is he here?" He said, "Because you're not working. You work, I'll get rid of him." It just hit me. I learned to work through Billy. I'll never forget when we were doing hair, we were closed out of town because of obscenity, 1970. And they went to trial. And do you know who was on our defense team? A young graduate Harvard law student named Alan Dershowitz.
Wow.
We won the case. I remember company trying out across the street. And whenever I didn't have to go on, I would go and see company. And I remember being so excited, I thought I was going to pee on myself. I knew that something great in the American musical theater was taking place.
I want to say thank God for Hair, because so many people that have been on this show got their equity cards or got their breaks with that show.
Yes.
And there were so many companies around the country. But one of the things that I've discovered about this, and if you can shed some light on this as well, is that each production or each company of hair is different.
Yes, it's true. And different directors. Yes. Julie Arnell, who was our choreographer, I remember Julie coming in and working with us. But each production was different. I think our director was Jim Sharman, who was an Australian. And in that cast was Donna Summer's sisters, the Gaines sisters. And you think Donna can sing. Her sister could blow. I remember a couple, Lloyd and Sandra. I think they got married. Oh, it was a wonderful cast. Yeah.
So, but how did that get you to New York?
After that, I remember I left school and I was going to New York. and I was going to work in the theater. And the first show I did was an off-Broadway show. It only lasted a week with our June Gable, our wonderful, beloved June Gable,
Yes.
written by Earl Wilson's son.
Yes.
And then I was a student at Manhattan School, and I remember this is when I met Albert. I auditioned, I think, for Let My People Come or Let My People Go or whatever. And I remember going to Albert, said, Albert, I just got cast in the Jeffersons. I can't do the show. And he said, well, go. But yeah. But I mean, in between that, I still did some fabulous theater work. Pearl Bailey, Mama Pearl on the wall. I loved her. I truly loved this lady. Do you know she came to my Broadway debut in The Me Nobody Knows?
Wow.
I didn't even know she was there until she came backstage. She said, you'll get better.
I only saw her once. I went to the Merv Griffin. I went to a taping of the Merv Griffin show, and his guests were Gerald and Betty Ford, believe it or not. And she was very close with them.
Yes.
So
yes.
She came on as a surprise.
Yes.
And she came through the audience. I can see her as clearly as I see you right now.
Yeah.
And she came through the audience with a brown and yellow moo-moo.
Yes.
She sang just in time. And I hope I can find that episode someday. And she worked the audience, and she owned that theater.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it was one of the best experiences of my life, being in the theater, seeing her. I want to talk a moment about the Jeffersons, because so many people know you from this. I mean, Mike Evans and then Damon Evans, no relation at all.
You know, I never met him, but I did meet his mother. I went to church one Sunday, my first year on the show, and this woman came up to me and she said, you don't know me, but I'm Mike's mother, and I just want to congratulate you.
Wow.
That's the closest I ever got to Mike. Yeah.
But you are in a very unique group. When I think of the two Darrens and the two Gladys Kravitz and the two Beckys on Roseanne, to step into a role, it's one thing when you come into a Broadway show as I never use the word replace, because I don't believe anyone can be replaced, but you step into their shoes and you bring your persona into that.
Yeah.
But when you are doing a character, I mean, first of all, he had all those years on All in the Family, and then you are doing the Jeffersons, and he had been on that for a couple of years. What do you bring to the role, or what are you asked to bring to the role to step into that? And was that an easy thing for you to do, or was it a difficult transition for you?
It was hell. And I'll tell you why. First of all, I had never seen the Jeffersons when I was cast. I was so different from Mike. We tape before a live audience. And before every episode that we performed, the cast was introduced to the audience. And I can remember definitely the first year, maybe for the first year and a half, there would always be someone in the audience who says, what happened to the other Lionel? And so, yeah, it was hell. As you may know, from whatever you know about Bewitched, Agnes Moorehead wasn't that welcoming to the second Darren.
That's right.
I always knew that Isabel preferred Mike. In fact, the great Hattie Winston, who was one of the original members of NEC, pulled me aside my first year. She said, watch out. I can see on the TV screen that there's no support for you there. The greatest support I received, and who I loved to this day was Lenny Kravitz's mother, Roxy Roker. She was my heart, and I always felt safe around Roxy. I just felt safe around her. I loved her. I worshipped her. I loved Mother Jefferson too. I I was surprised. I'd gone online. I was a pallbearer at her funeral. I don't remember that, but I loved her because she reminded me of my grandmother
Wow.
who raised me.
Something else. Yeah.
It was a wonderful cast. Sherman, of course, I knew from New York. I had such respect for Florence, Marla Gibbs, because when we were on the show, people don't know this. Marla had a full-time job at an airline. She didn't become a regular until probably her third season on the show. So it was very, very difficult.
How did that come about for you? Were you called in to audition for this, or was it something that you pursued?
No, I didn't pursue it. Basically, I had anyone. Please, I was just able to make a connection with the wonderful, talented, beautiful Lindsay Krause. I had done a soap at CBS, but I had also done a drama with Lindsay and William Shatner called 10th Level. I remember being so nervous. My legs were shaking. And Lindsay came up to me and she said, I don't know how you do it. You have 1 or 2 lines and they expect you to sit around all day and deliver. And I immediately became calm. I've been looking for her over 40 years to thank her for that. Pat Kirkland was head of casting for CBS. And I think I went by Pat's office because in those days you taped in the complex in CBS. And she said, where they're looking for it. So it was just sort of like that. I remember even going home and there were all these messages from CBS that I had a call back. They wanted to fly me to California. And I get there, I do the flight. I forget the hotel, but there I remember was Peter Allen lounging on the deck and all this, And what people don't know is that after the original audition, they called Norman in, and he said, "I know you." I said, "Yeah." He said, "We were thinking of you for the role of JJ in Good Times. If you want the part, it's yours. We don't need a screen test." And that's how it happened.
That's amazing.
I had, in fact, the last thing I remember, Jan Murray, who was the casting director for Good Times, said, "You're the best actor we've seen so far, but we're going to see a comedian tonight," who was Jimmy Walker, who eventually got the role. But yeah, so Norman had already seen me by the time I met him. So it just, all this stuff just sort of fell into place. Like, that's why when Stanley and I were talking, he said, "Well, did you realize?" I said, "No." It just kind of was there.
When you went into television, was that an easy transition for you?
No. I remember having to go to an acting coach because everything was larger than life.
Yes. I know.
There was a time, one episode halfway through my first season, that they were actually thinking of getting rid of me because I didn't get a laugh. They inserted a laugh track. It was Norman who stood up for me. And I went to an acting coach. And from that, I remember what happened. They pulled me in the office and they said, "Did you watch yourself?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Never watch yourself again." I had become paralyzed from having watched myself. To this day, I have never seen anything I've done on film. Never.
Well, do you want me to tell you how good you are?
I have never seen myself on film yeah. So,
I do not. I mean, these interviews. I mean, they're all out there. I do not go back and watch them. I hope that other people do. Videos that I've done, shows that I've done. People say, "Oh, I'd love to see that again." I don't go back. I'm always looking ahead, and I know you are too.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, it wasn't at all easy, at all.
And after that series ended, I mean, I know you did Roots, you've done other things, but then going into the theater, and so many actors that I've interviewed. I mean, one of my favorite interviews was with Dorothy Lyman. To hear her perspective on how the doing Mama's Family, she feels really hurt her career, because when it went into syndication, where they got no money, unfortunately, and it's still showing 24/7 on weekends, still no money for these actors, which is a shame. Somebody needs to do something retroactively. But that she did 26. I mean, there were so many seasons that there was no time, no energy to do anything else in her career. And although she's done a lot of directing and other things, that's what she's known for.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Richard, because, actually, I have straddled theater and also the classical music world, going back and forth. And after the Jeffersons, I came back, I was studying, and the classical music world was extremely resistant to my TV background. The only person who understood it was Beverly Sills. I remember auditioning for Akhenaten by Philip Glass. Again, within 2 weeks, I was making my New York City Opera debut. And I remember she called my manager at the time. She said, "We haven't seen any press on him." And he said, "Well, I didn't know. Look, he is a good singer, but he's also Lionel from the Jeffersons. We want to sell tickets." And she was the only one. Otherwise, they would say, that doesn't mean anything. That is why I spent close to 7 years in London. I got nominated for an Olivier Award. I sang at Glyndebourne Opera, Royal Opera House, London Symphony. I recorded at Abbey Studios. I was nominated for an Olivier Award. I would do television. They don't pigeonhole you over there. As you know, you can do this, that, and you're a performer. You're an artist. But here we pigeonhole people.
I want to talk about that for a moment, but I have a question from Danny Miller, who's watching. And to get back to the Jeffersons, and then we're going to move on. Yeah. He says he wonders how Belinda Tolbert was acting towards you, that, when you came into the show. What was that relationship like?
A professional colleague.
Yes.
Yes. It's so funny because so many people, when they see us and they see the camaraderie on camera, they think that our lives off camera is that way. It is a job, people. Mm-hmm. Yes. It is a job. You go home afterwards,
Right. Yes.
Like I said, first of all, another reason I was so enamored of Roxy is that I knew Roxy from New York. When I was doing Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope on Broadway, she was next door doing the River Niger, So, but no, after the 6 o'clock, you go home, Like I said, I really respected the entire cast as professionals. There were certain individuals who I was particularly fond of.
I want to get back to something you just said about the pigeonholing that we do in this country. Do you have a theory on that?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've reached the age in my life. it's very important for me to thank those people who have helped me in any little way. I just wrote a letter to Lee Grant because she was one of the actors who my acting teacher would always put up as being on purpose, doing the work. And I remember her talking about when she wanted to direct, and that Hollywood basically wouldn't allow her. She had to relocate back to New York. Those of us from the American musical theater world knows. Oh, you're from musicals.
I know, absolutely.
So you can't act, my friend Candy Brown, I was saying.
Candy, I love her so much.
She
Candy.
just hooked up, and I said something about being a Fosse dancer. She said, "Do you know? After all these years, they still call me a Fosse dancer. I've acted, I've directed." It's the nature. I think it's a particularly American phenomenon as well. Like I said, I didn't encounter this overseas. I really didn't. But here in the United States, whether it makes other people feel comfortable, I don't know. But we do it here.
Well, I want to ask you because, I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning of our show today, this is Resist Superstitions Day. And most people in the theater, I know me, I'm superstitious. Do you have any theater superstitions?
Don't say break a leg. I think that's probably the only one I can think of. Really. Other than that, no. I know if I stump a crack on the sidewalk, I'll turn around 3 times. I really do. I do. What can I tell you? But no, I can't think of any.
Looking back over your career, and you're still very active, and I cannot wait for this memoir to come out. I can't wait for your one-man show. I can't wait for all of the what's ahead. But is there any particular point, looking back at your career, where the word that I chose for today, and I'm going to do a giveaway, that I chose for today is growth. I want to know what particular time in your life or career, it could be before your career took off, where you feel that you experienced the most growth in your career or life.
Okay. This is a very important time. I loved Interlochen, and I wouldn't have been able to do what I did upon graduation if I hadn't had it. It was also a very difficult time. I go from an all-black high school to this all-white environment where you were on your own. I was performing. I was exhausted when I graduated, and I was one of the few people who didn't go directly to college. What I did do was I remember the whole time I'm at Interlochen, I asked myself, why me? Why was I chosen when there's so many kids, Black kids, as talented, more talented than myself, who didn't get this opportunity? And what happened was that I came home and I started an opera company. All Black kids from Douglas to Morgan to Peabody. And we put on 2 operas at the Arena Playhouse by Menotti, The Telephone, The Medium. We were so successful. We did it again. The Baltimore Sun, the Baltimore Afro reviewed it. 2 of our singers went on to the Met. 1 singer went on to win a Fulbright. My cousin ended up teaching voice at the Baltimore School of the Arts. And I remember thinking, this is what it really is about. It's about taking what you have done and passing it on to the next group of people and teaching them. And that's what I try to do to this day, And one of the things I always tell young people, why are you in such a hurry? Well, learn to enjoy the process of becoming all you can be. That's why we have Priscilla Lopez and Andre DeShields. These are the people who I look up to today, Maurice Hines. Enjoy the process of becoming. There is no there. It's just a steady progress of growing and evolving. That really is what it's about.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to do my wind down questions as we wind down the interview. And these are just fun questions. They're random questions, just to give everyone a broader sense of you. And the first three questions are surprise questions.
Okay.
Because I haven't even looked at them yet. And the first question is, what chance encounter changed your life forever? Besides me, of course.
Well, I think I told you this story. I'm 13 years old, 14 maybe, because Bobby I had met in Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, Robert Hooks. He was appearing in The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore at the old Ford's Theater.
I know the story. I love this story. I'm glad you're telling it. I love it. I have told this story to so many people. So thank you.
At the old Ford's Theater in Baltimore. I must have been in the 8th or 9th grade. It starred Tallulah Bankhead, Ruth Ford, and Tab Hunter. I had just left the bookstore where I had purchased Tallulah's memoir. He had wrapped it up in brown paper, tied it in a string, and I'm taking the shortcut home, the back alley of the Ford's Theater, and a taxi drives up. And who should pop out but Tallulah Bankhead? And I said, oh my God, Miss Bankhead, I just bought your book. Please, will you sign it? She said, give me a pen. And so I'm frantically searching. I can't find a pen. The man next to her who accompanied her gave a pen. She signed the book and thrust it to me. And she said, never ask a star for an autograph without a pen.
I love the fact that she said, never ask a star.
I swear, they were her exact words.
I believe you. I know it. I have told so many people that story. I love it. That's great.
It's true.
Oh my God. My next surprise question.
And I never have since. I'm sure if there's someone whose autograph I want, I have a pen.
Better than that, always have a Sharpie on you, folks. So next, what's something that you learned about yourself in the last 3 months?
I'm still here, and I have to tell my story. It's a final healing for me. Whether it's a memoir, one-man show, whatever, I have to tell it. It's not only is it a closure, but there are certain people whose stories I didn't understand as I was growing up, who I can maybe understand and forgive and move on because I'm carrying around too much stuff and it's not healthy for me. So I know I have to tell this story. I know I must tell my story.
I can't wait. This is a card called Open Loop. I don't know what I'm going to ask, but it says start a sentence and wait for the other person to ask you to finish it. So, for example, you know what would be great right now, dot, dot, dot. How it works. The brain is programmed to bring everything to a conclusion if you start a sentence that the other person asks you to continue. They'll feel more invested in the conversation. So you start a sentence and I'll finish it.
How are you feeling today, Richard?
Well, that's asking a question.
Okay.
Okay, start a sentence and I'll finish the sentence.
Okay. Today is the first day of the rest of my life.
And it started off beautifully because I had the opportunity to sit and talk with a brilliant man named Damon Evans.
And I feel so grateful and humbled that you would ask me, because as you know, we've had our own private little conversations. You've taught me some things, and I thank you for that.
I can't wait until we do dinner, and we're going to do that dinner with Albert Poland. We're going to have a great dinner together. Okay? So last Friday, and I asked this question last night. I had Stacia Fernandez on the show last night. Have you ever worked with her?
No.
Phenomenal actress. Mm-hmm. And I asked her this question last night because last Friday was Wonderful Weirdo Day. And that our Friday wrap-up show. And so I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked her last night. Do you consider the word weirdo an insult?
Not really. No, not at all. Because see, what is weird to you may be perfectly normal to me.
That's
and
right.
It may be quite brilliant and wonderful to me.
That's right.
And I may want to be weirdo. I may want to celebrate my weirdness. No, I do not. I don't.
No, and I celebrate that little boy wearing that sheet dancing around to the Barefoot Contessa. Because for me, I mean, I did a one-man show, and I said, imagine my parents having a kid who at 5 years old thought he was Carol Channing. So, my poor parents. So, what is the most rebellious thing that you've ever wanted to do, but didn't?
Oh. The most rebellious thing I've ever wanted to do, but didn't. Probably to stand up to my grandmother. She was the matriarch, the true matriarch of the family, and a strong woman, very much like Sal Minio's mother. I don't know if you know Sal's story.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Yes. And I wish I could have done it in a way that she could have understood, but instead I kept running. I ran to Interlochen. I ran away to school. I just kept running, and that's the best I could do at that point because I was afraid I'd lose control.
Wow. What are you up to in the next 30 minutes after today's show? Probably
coming down from this. Because I'm telling you, Richard, I was so scared. I said, oh my God. I said, I took 10 COVID tests out to think I was so upset. Every time I go to the library, I take at least 6 with me because they have the right thing.
Wow. This is from I have a calendar of, positive actions, and I'm going to read from this. It says, the older I get, the more humble I become. I know so much, yet there is still so much to learn and experience. Today's self-love action. Today, when I encounter a new idea or am offered a new experience, I'll approach it with humility by listening more and speaking less. What is something that you are excited about learning about that you have not really, that you feel that is still ahead of you to learn?
That I have the capacity to overcome fears that are standing in the way. I did my first talk about my life, I think April 2021 at Brooklyn College. And since then, people said, you got to write the memoir and stuff. And I realized I'm stalling because I'm afraid to tell my story. And I remember reaching out to my friend, Robert Jones, who wrote the wonderful book, The Prophets. And I said, do you get scared? And he said, all the time. He said, the whole time I was writing The Prophets, I was scared because it was a story that had never been told before. So I didn't know how it would be received. And he said, look, it took my friend, Michael Jackson, 20 years to write and put on a strange loop. So yes, we're all scared when we are crossing boundaries, when we are breaking taboos, when we are moving forward and telling stories that haven't been told.
Absolutely. Well, I'm right there with you. So, what are 3 things that you need to throw out of your life?
Procrastination, the fear that we just talked about, and not being grateful for all that I have.
Wow.
I need to make a daily gratitude list.
Amen. I'm with you on that. And it's funny that you say that, because this is daily acts of kindness. Hold a door open for someone. There are many doors that are going to open for you once you start telling those truths. This is a very interesting question based on what you just said. What are you most afraid of winning at? And if you do win, what would that mean to you?
Okay, repeat that question.
What are you most afraid of winning? And if you were to win, what would that mean to you?
Okay, I think I have the answer. Winning at reclaiming my life and achievements for myself, because it would mean that I have ownership of it, as opposed to doing it for someone else.
Amen. It's interesting that you say that. I'm going to find a clip. If I can find this clip, there's a clip of David Bowie, who said that exact same thing that I saw yesterday. And he said, when you are creating art, you need to create art for yourself. Because once you start creating art for someone else, you're giving up ownership of that art.
Well, look, your life should be lived for yourself, period.
Yes.
Period. You know? Yeah. Otherwise, you're just giving it away, and you don't appreciate the effort you have put into it, to get to where you are. Most definitely. I agree with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Wasn't David married to Iman?
Yes.
Yes. Iman came on the Jeffersons. I met her. I wasn't in that episode, but I remember I was on the set that day and they introduced me to her. Yeah, beautiful woman. Beautiful.
Wow. Why are you passionate about what you do?
Oh my God. I always have been. That's all I can say. I don't remember not being passionate about the arts. I believe it is such a lifeblood for all of us. When I go to the theater or anything in the arts today, I see how it feeds us, how it educates us, how it broadens our minds. For instance, when I started that little opera group, one of the things was I loved opera, I loved the performing arts, and no one in my age group and in the Black community was relating to it. And once we did that little opera in that little theater, people said, "Oh God, it was just like a play with music." I mean, they were right on top of us, and they got into the story. I love sharing my love and seeing people, respond to it in kind and opening up their minds and say, "Oh God, it is good. It's not as foreign as I thought it was."
That's wonderful. And this is my last question for you today. What are your truths?
Okay. Truths in what sense? In what way?
Those that you own, the truths that you want to share.
Like I believe in one's work. Life is a process of becoming. There's no need to hurry. There's no getting there. It is each day, each minute, each second of growing and evolving and becoming more and giving that out to the universe.
Damon, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere for a moment. We're going to give our giveaway here. Thank you all for participating, and we'll see who our winner is. And thank you. And it is Cherie Callahan. Once again, she's winning a lot these days, but she shows up. I think she's got the magic touch from my hometown of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Don't go anywhere for a moment. Damon, I want to thank you for being here, but I'm going to give you the final word in just a moment. The word I chose today, everyone, was growth. And we all are growing each and every day with every moment by moment, with what we do, how we act, and how we interact with everybody we come in contact with. Damon, I grow with every show that I do. I learn so much. And the fact that you said yes to me, Albert, thank you for pushing him in my direction. So I dedicate this show to Albert Peaches Poland. I am so thrilled that you said yes to both him and to me. I am such an admirer of you and your body of worth. So thank you. I want to thank everybody for showing up this afternoon. I've said this before, and I will say it again, and Damon knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. In this business, we don't take it lightly when you show up for us. You could have been anywhere else for the last hour, and the fact that you decided to spend it with us means the world. But it doesn't stop here. We hope that you will go out and tell others about this show. It's Telephone Tuesday. Pick up the phone, call a friend, tell them about this interview. Advertising is great. I've got some amazing sponsors this week. Kirk Peterson, Deborah Stone, Aaron Califf, and a mystery sponsor who is sponsoring this show. Thank you all for sponsoring the show and keeping me afloat. It means a lot to me. But word of mouth really helps. So please let your friends know about this. I always end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and reach out to the first name that pops up, and reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. And let that person know what they mean to you. As my dear friend Sean Monaco always says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And you never know what someone else is going through right now. But I always say, if you're going to go out in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper alone. So I'm going to leave the screen right now, Damon, and I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any final message you want to leave everyone with today. I thank you for being here. And when that book comes out, or when your show is coming out, I want you to come back and we'll do part 2.
Okay.
You promise me that?
I promise.
Okay. So It's all yours. Thank you.
Okay. Look. Actually, I must say, Norman, Lear, Nickel Ross, and West, the entire cast of the Jeffersons, gave me an enormous gift because you see, up to that point in American television, there hadn't been a weekly portrayal of middle class and upper middle class Black people. And I had a chance to do that. Lionel was a college student working on his master's. I also, as I said, can understand Isabel being very supportive of Michael. When All in the Family started, it was Michael Evans and Isabel Sanford. There was no George. There was no one else. So that's history. So yeah, I understand that. Time and age gives you perspective on things, and so that's why I said I have to write my life story. I have to write it or perform it so that I can let go of things that I now understand. And it has been an immense honor, privilege, and pleasure to share this time with you. And I humbly thank you.